So a lot of us can remember how we discovered some of our favorite metal bands, but hearing one of their albums isn't always how it first happens. Given that, I'm going to discuss 10 classic bands I found out about through any other means besides one of their studio albums. Some good stories here as well, so definitely stay tuned. First up is American thrash metal band Exodus, formed in 1979 in Richmond, California. And interestingly enough, I didn't discover Exodus on their debut studio album, Bonded by Blood, which we might talk about a little later anyways. Rather, I discovered them through this videotape. This is the Ultimate Revenge Combat Tour Live, put out by Combat Records. It is live material from Exodus and Slayer, and Venom to some degree. I mean, Venom has an interview in here, as well as a couple of music videos. You can kind of see the track listing there as well. I didn't buy this for Exodus, though, because I didn't really know about Exodus at the time. I did buy it for Slayer, because I was already into Slayer in 1985. I'd already bought, Show No Mercy. I think I might have had Haunting the Chapel by then, but then I had newly bought Hell Awaits. That was the first Slayer album I bought new. So, yeah. So this is how I discovered Exodus. And the tape did come out, I think, a few weeks before Bonded by Blood did. I can't remember. I also remember that I did discover Bonded by Blood a little bit later on. I think I bought it in the summer of 85. So for me, this was definitely my first exposure to the band. And what great exposure. I mean, there's some killer songs on here. We've got Piranha. We've got Metal Command, Exodus, Strike of the Beast. And it's amazing. I mean, do I want more songs from the band? Yes, I do. But I was really psyched to get this tape. Again, 1985, this came out. Great tape. I always wonder why it never made it to any other physical media besides VHS. That always killed me. It was definitely not available on DVD or Blu-ray, which I would love now. That'd be really cool. It is on YouTube. A lot of people have ripped it and things like that, but only on VHS, which is really bizarre. So there's that. Of course, Bonded by Blood, their debut studio album. Killer album. It is one of the amazing classic thrash metal albums. It's in everyone's top 10, I'm sure of it. Amazing. The album art, of course, is ridiculous, but killer songs on here. I mean, what isn't amazing, right? The title track, I love the song Exodus. Strike of the Beast, they do live. I think they end their shows with it, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Piranha was one of my favorites as a kid. Deliver Us to Evil, just amazing. There you go. And also, rest in peace, Paul Bailoff, of course. There it is, Exodus. Discovered them through a home video release of all things. Next up is American power thrash metal band Sanctuary, formed in 1983 in Seattle, Washington. And how I discovered Sanctuary is kind of interesting. I didn't hear their debut studio album again, but I did see the tour for it. At the time, Sanctuary was touring with Megadeth and Warlock. This is probably in May of 1988, if I'm not mistaken. Amazing stuff. Sanctuary blew both bands away. I mean, Warlock was decent. Megadeth were not good at all. Like, that was probably the big surprise there, because I was going for Megadeth. They were sloppy. I mean, really sloppy. They looked a little lost, to be honest. I remember I was sitting there with a couple of friends of mine. We were standing there, rather. And Mustaine goes into this song, and it's just an isolated riff at first. And I'm like, what song is he playing? And I was very familiar with the material, even the stuff on So Far So Good So What, which was the tour for this. And my buddy's like, I have no idea what this song is at all. And then the rest of the band kicks in, and we're like, holy shit, it's Liar. And that's really how messy the playing was of the show. It was awful. I had seen them on Peace Cells. They were amazing. I saw them on Rest in Peace. They were even more amazing. But something about that show on that tour was just bad. Really bad. Anyways, I do have the concert ticket to the show. I have it framed back there, but you can see it right here as well. I miss having concert tickets you can keep for shows. I mean, I think a lot of us do, especially older folks. It's just nice to have that memento. But anyways, of course, the album that Sanctuary put out was Refuge Denied. Great Ed Repka art there, by the way. Refuge Denied, amazing album. It was produced by Dave Mustaine. Mustaine has a lot of connections to Sanctuary, not just touring with them, but also producing this album. The amazing world-ordained voice, man, it was pitch perfect live. In fact, I would get the record and say, he sounded just like this. So blown away by it. Great songs. Battle Angels, amazing song. Die for My Sins is probably the song that really blew me away that night I saw them. Sanctuary, great song. Even the cover of White Rabbit, the Jefferson, is it Jefferson Airplane at that time? Cover song is pretty decent. But yeah, so there it is. Sanctuary, Refuge Denied, a band I discovered through a concert. Next is British heavy metal legends Judas Priest, formed in 1970 in Birmingham, England. Of course, we all know the Mighty Priest and how we all discovered the band, of course. Mine was kind of in two parts. Back in 1981, I was 13 years old. I was just discovering heavy music. And I think like a lot of kids in the early 80s, I was listening to a lot of the radio, but I was finding other means too, many of which we're going to talk about in this video, obviously. But one was surprisingly a candy product. It was called Chew Bops. They were basically miniature record jackets with the original art on the front, a little description on the back. It usually came with lyrics to one song inside as well. Also, you would get this bubblegum record. They did a lot of these in this time period. Blondie, I think Gary Newman's in there. Kiss did two of them. I think Dynasty and Unmasked were in there. But the one I discovered that I thought was interesting, and I was collecting them all at the time, was the one for British Steel by Judas Priest. And amazing cover, right? With gripping that, that razor blade. So amazing. I was just about 13. I was trying to think how old I was. Yeah, that's about right. And just killer. And the funny thing is that I didn't really go any further into looking into the band. I just liked the artwork. I wasn't sure what the band was. The name Judas Priest didn't say a lot to my brain. Didn't tell me they were super heavy or not. So I hadn't really heard them until 2 years later, which is funny to say because 1983 is a little late for someone my age to discover Priest. Officially, their music and all that. But so in 1983, this is the fall of 83. I was a sophomore in high school, 15 years old, as I said. And I was discovering a lot through the radio, as I mentioned before. And there was a station, I'm not sure where it was. I was living in Park City, Utah at the time. It might have been a Salt Lake station because it sounded like a bigger rock station. I wasn't thinking Park City was big enough to have something like that at the time, or even now. But they used to play a lot of heavier rock stuff. And I was really getting into metal at the time. And they played a Judas Priest song. And back then, I think like a lot of people my age, we were cassette taping the radio because that's how we got songs, especially if we were pre-legal working age and having our own money and buying records. So, it's kind of the early version of peer-to-peer, sharing and stuff. It's basically to tape it off the radio. So I did a lot of that. I taped a lot of songs with the radio. Of course, there's this one from Judas Priest that I got on my tape. And surprise, it was also from British Steel, which is interesting to say. It's kind of a call back to the Chew Bops thing. But also, it wasn't a hit. I mean, it wasn't Living After Midnight. It wasn't Breaking the Law. It wasn't even one of the heavier tracks like Metal Gods or Rapid Fire. It was United, of all songs, a highly anthemic song. At 15, though, it kind of spoke to my metal discovery period. I really loved it. Later on, I'd find Take on the World, which had a similar vibe. But I really loved that anthemic quality to it, and I was kind of hooked. I was like, this is Judas Priest. This is pretty great. Funny if I would discover much heavier stuff later on. And again, this is probably October, November of 83. Then some people know the story, how I moved back to Worcester, Mass. in December of 83 and started really getting on my metal discovery. Probably January or February of 84, I basically blind bought these two albums right here, Defenders of the Faith and Screaming for Vengeance, and even more blown away because I was like, wow, they sound like this now, right? Very, very cool. Yeah, so that was basically how I got into Judas Priest. I remember also having this memory of, I had the cassette tapes to both of those at the time, and I remember listening to, it was Screaming for Vengeance specifically, right after my my final exams, sophomore year of high school, walking home. I had a long walk from the school to my apartment and just listening and just getting so excited. The summer's coming. I'm excited for that. I needed Judas Priest to be the soundtrack for that. And Scream for Vengeance was just that album to do it for me. So, of course, I have great memories of this band over the decades. And of course, we all know I didn't see Priest until 2018 live, which is just absurd. How could that be? But it was. So anyways, yeah, Judas Priest, definitely. I don't recall discovering any other metal bands on the radio, maybe because largely most of them weren't on the radio. I mean, Priest seemed like a little bit of a fluke back then. Most of them were making music videos or showing up in some other way. Music videos, by the way, we're going to talk about next, because clearly I'm a child of the 80s, and that's going to be a way I discover things, especially metal. So yeah, so Judas Priest on the radio. There you go. Next up is American heavy metal band Armored Saint, formed in 1982 in Los Angeles, California. And how I discovered Armored Saint, and I guess I kind of ruined it by saying music videos. It was a music video, namely for their song Can You Deliver? How I was watching music videos at the time was kind of interesting. Largely as a kid, I didn't have cable television, but a lot of my friends did. And one thing, so my friends did, kind of in step with taping radio, was that a lot of them also taped music video shows, whether it was on MTV or with Night Flight from USA or Night Tracks on TBS or all that. The only access I had to music videos at the time was probably Friday Night Videos, which was on network television, so that was free. But past that, I wasn't really getting to see a lot of music videos, at least on my own. So I had friends that were taping them, and I in turn would tape their tapes, and that's how I got exposed to music videos throughout probably the sort of 82 to 86 period, which is my high school years. So one of those bands was Armored Saint. And of course, Armored Saint has that great look. They have that outfits that they're like Manowar almost, right? They have this armor on, and hence Armored Saints and all of that. So I really love their look. And of course, at that time, what am I, 15, 16 years old? I love a good image, right? It's the 1980s, Kiss did it, Cooper did it, even Venom to some degree had a bit of an image. So I definitely dug it from Armored Saint as well. So that, that drew me in. The music video is pretty fun. I would have loved to have been in that crowd. That would have been amazing. But Armored Saint, of course, had their debut studio album, March of the Saint, from which Can You Deliver is on. Great songs on this one. I love the title track a lot. Madhouse is a classic from them. Obviously, they've done it live a number of times. I even like Take a Turn, which is definitely kind of a power ballad on the album, but I still dig it. It's a fun song. Kind of reminds me of Cries in the Night from Wasp a little bit, which is around that time period too. Same vibe to it, but pretty awesome. Warriors on Motorcycles. You saw that enough in 80s movies, especially B movies. Pretty fun, but yeah. March of the Saint from Armored Saint, pretty awesome. Other bands I discovered through music videos, definitely in 1983, you couldn't get away with not mentioning Quiet Riot or Def Leppard. Come On Feel the Noise and Rock of Ages, respectively. Bought the albums on cassette immediately after that. In fact, I was into cassettes a lot as a kid back then. The vinyl came a little bit later for the most part. I did buy a little vinyl, but mostly cassettes because I had a Walkman, and we all did, right? I had one of those really cool Super Walkmans. They were sort of gold plated, but they were just a little bit bigger than a cassette, so you could fit them in your pocket. Great stuff. But anyways, yeah, lots of bands. I mean, I could go into tons that I discovered through music videos. But again, a lot of it was through friends and them taping of videos that I would tape off to them and all of that stuff. So there you go. Anyways, Armored Saint through music videos. Next is American crossover thrash band MOD, formed in 1986 in New York, New York. The place so nice they named it twice. Anyways, of course, MOD, fronted by Billy Milano, formerly of SOD. Of course, SOD, Stormtroopers of Death. MOD stands for Method of Destruction, or Methods of Destruction. Was it plural? I can't remember. Someone will remind me in the comments, of course. Obviously, the other members of SOD went back to their bands, and Charlie and Scott's case, Anthrax. And then, of course, Loker went on to do Nuclear Assault. So Milano formed MOD with an entirely different band, different members, and they put out their debut album, and was in 1987 called USA for MOD. Strange enough, I don't have a copy of that anywhere. I think I sold off that in Gross Misconduct later in the 90s. I sold off a lot of my CDs back then. Unfortunately, in some cases, kills me. Those were pretty decent albums. I think they wore with me over time. I have a weird love-hate relationship with jokey metal. Like, I'm not always into it, and sometimes the joke wears thin. With MOD, some of that did happen. Oddly enough, I do still have a couple tapes of theirs that I don't like. That I hate it. I really hate, actually. There's Surfin' MOD, which is ridiculously awful. Why do I still have this? And of course, Rhythm of Fear is okay. They're trying to go more back to a hardcore thing. Rally NYC is really an amazing song, but past that, this album is kind of junk. But anyways, how I discovered MOD. It was through a mixtape, namely this tape that my buddy Eric made me. This was back when I was, the first 10 months of when I was out on my own. This is after the Great Purge of 1987. Watch that video for context for that. And then I went out on my own. So I was living in California and Utah and Oregon. And I think this was definitely in the Utah period. And my buddy Eric, whom we're going to probably talk about a few times, hi Eric, made me this mixtape. Probably thinking that, I wasn't discovering a lot of bands of my own because I was busy working and struggling and being out in unfamiliar places. It's like friends do, right? So there's some cool bands on here. I knew all the bands except for MOD because Aren't You Hungry starts the comp. So this is actually how I discovered MOD. Pretty cool. And again, I did like some of their stuff. A lot of it fell away from me over time, but doesn't change the fact that got a cool mixtape and discovered cool bands through that. I'm thinking a lot of you probably had mixtapes as well. Maybe you got your friends into stuff, their musical things through that. So yeah, you can let me know about that for sure. Anyways, yeah, comps made by friends, basically mixtapes. And that's how I discovered MOD. Next up is American once punk, but later heavy metal band The Plasmatics, formed in 1978 in New York, New York. So, of course, the Plasmatics, fronted by the amazing Wendy O. Williams. Rest in peace, Wendy O., by the way. Although it was a punk band, they were moving into metal at this time. Wendy really had the spirit of heavy metal as well in a lot of ways. She brought some of that punk sensibility into it. And she sort of looked punk for a while, that mohawk in the early days and all of that. But they really were moving more into this metal thing. Of course, Wendy O in '84 would go to do a solo project, which was full-on heavy metal, produced by Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons even played bass on it under the pseudonym Reginald Von Helsing. Other Kiss members are on that record too. Paul Stanley, Eric Carr. I think Vinnie Vincent might be on it, but I know Ace Frehley is for sure. A lot of people call it the Kiss album, or the best Kiss album that Kiss never put out, including the song It's My Life, which Gene wrote for Wendy. Great song. So anyways, how I discovered the Plasmatics was interesting. It was on television, a TV show specifically. This was back in 1981. The show was SCTV, or Second City Television. It was a Canadian show that was basically aping Saturday Night Live. It was on Canadian TV, but America also aired it on Friday nights back in the early 80s. I think it was NBC specifically. And so in October 81, I was vacationing with my family in Carmel, California. We're which is kind of a beach resort town. And we're in this little beach house we had rented, I guess, for the night. And everyone went to sleep. I decided to watch some late night TV, put this on, and a segment came on. John Candy was one of the actors on the show before he made it big. It was a recurring skit where he was the host of this kind of talk show, but he was very rural Canadian. The set was log cabiny and that kind of thing. And so, but he also had musical guests on this show within a show, and he had the Plasmatics on. And I didn't know anything about them at first. I thought it looked interesting. But then they performed the Doom song, and I was just blown away. Here I am, 13 years old. This is 1981. You're not seeing this on television much at all, if at all. So the Doom song, Wendy O's dressed in this outfit with bat wings, and this giant horn on her head, and this gigantic pentagram behind her. The lighting is dramatic. It's so amazing. And I'm like, wow, what is this? Really blew my mind. I don't think I knew such music, such heavy music was a thing at all. Because what was I listening to before that? Maybe AC/DC and a lot of the radio rock, new wave stuff at the time. So Wendy O was blowing me away for sure. So that's actually how I discovered the Doom song specifically, and it did prompt me later to buy this EP called Metal Priestess, clearly going to metal at this time, even though she looks a bit punk rock. Great little EP. Of course, I said Doom songs on here, but Sex Junkie, classic Plasmatic song. Also Master Plan, which is a really, really awesome song. See the other two guys there and all of that. So yeah, Wendy O. Williams in the Plasmatics. And I think this is probably the only band I really saw on television that was of a metal sort. If we go into the hard rock realm, of course, there was Kiss. I saw the NBC premiere of Kiss Me So Phantom of the Park in 1978 when I was 10 years old. Saw it in a hotel room in Las Vegas with an in-hotel babysitter. Just sat on the floor and watched the movie, and I was blown away by that, but I wasn't really grabbed by the music. I was 10 years old. Mostly just liked it for its cartoonish aspect. So, but that's Kiss. They're hard rock at best. But yeah, definitely Plasmatics on SCTV. Amazing memory. Next is American once heavy metal band Motley Crue, formed in 1981 in Los Angeles, California. And my discovery of Motley Crue was through a magazine ad. I hadn't heard any of them, and this was definitely fall of 1983, so I hadn't discovered Too Fast for Love yet. It was the ad for Shout at the Devil. It was a very provocative ad for me at the time. I was just discovering a lot of metal. I had discovered some of the heavier stuff like Venom or the other bands that used satanic imagery of sorts. But I remember seeing this ad in, I think it was either Hit Parader or Circus. At the time, I was really buying a lot of heavy metal magazines because I was wanting to know a lot more about this music I was getting excited about. And so I saw this ad and I was just like, wow, who the hell are these guys? They look like supervillains, out of a comic book. I was into comic books as a kid, but also like the pentagram on the cover is black. Just really tapped in a lot of dark aesthetics that I was into at the time. I was a big horror movie fan, so that was riding side saddle for sure. Of course, Shot the Devil, amazing record. We could show it now. Here it is. Second studio album for them. Of course, you need to see the pictures inside. There they are in all their glory. Songs on this one, oh my God, the title track is great. Looks to Kill. My favorite song on here still is probably Knock 'Em Dead Kid. But, there are other good songs too. Their cover Helter Skelter is pretty amazing as well. So there's Motley Crue. In fact, the ad, I should mention, the magazine ad, I loved it so much, I actually had it blown up and framed. It's in this room. It's over there, but I'll show a picture of it here. The ad, since it was out of a magazine, isn't the same dimensions as a poster, movie poster, rock poster, whatever. It's about 2 inches shy from top to bottom, so I had a custom frame made for it. But the ad was really significant to me in my metal discovery. I wanted to see it every day in my media room, so it's over there, and I get to do that. It's really funny because I think about a lot of the ads that I might have seen back then for other albums, and they just didn't burn into my mind as intensely as this ad did. This one just sticks out. To me, it's just classic and it's just memorable. And it really marks a chapter in my metal discovery, as I probably just already said a few times. So anyways, Motley Crue discovered through a magazine ad. Next up is American thrash metal band Exhorder, formed in 1985 in New Orleans, Louisiana. So I discovered Exhorder from my time working in college radio. I was the metal director for my college station. This is back in the early 1990s. I was discovering a lot of amazing bands. This is from 90 to 92, so you can kind of think about all the bands that were really becoming big then. I mean, obviously the first wave of death metal was happening too. There's some great thrash bands, even still in the early 90s. And Exhorder was definitely one of those bands. I should also mention they were on Roadrunner Records, and I had a bit of a tie-in with Roadrunner. I was reporting to them every Tuesday on their band specifically, so I had a lot of talks with their promotion guy, Mark Abramson, also known as Psycho. Great guy. We talked for like 2.5 years every Tuesday, but he was very big on this band. Of course, we would find out later that Pantera would sound a little bit like them, which is kind of funny. But that's an argument for another time, obviously. I did get a bio on the band. This one's actually for the law. I also had one on Slaughter in the Vatican, which I wish I still had, but I have to show you this instead. But I would get bios like this often before the albums would even come to me. So that would be my first exposure to certain bands, or they sometimes would come with the albums, depending. I believe Slaughter, I did get one before the fact. Sometimes they would be faxed, for those who remember fax machines, but also they would come through the mail. And Very cool. In fact, I have a lot of these bios. I have a whole book of them, 3-ring binder where I saved a lot of the ones I got specifically from college radio, but also my time afterwards when I was reviewing albums for a lot of zines throughout the mid and late 90s. So some of them are in this mix as well. Very cool mementos of the 90s in general and my time in college radio and reviewing albums in general. Very awesome. Of course, we do know that their debut album is Slaughter in the Vatican. It looks like this. Great album, all right? This is a reissue, by the way. I did have it on CD before, but I think I sold it off. Again, why the hell did I do this? But a great song. I mean, obviously, Desecrator is the hit of this album. It's the most amazing song on the record, for sure. But there's other stuff. Death in Vain's really great. Title track's really great. Legions of Death, pretty cool stuff as well. There's the band for you, by the way. Of course, you saw them earlier. Now you're seeing them again. Very cool with Exhorder. There were a slew of bands, as I said, that I discovered through college radio, largely through promotional materials first, including Morbid Angel, Napalm Death, Obituary, Malevolent Creation, Sadist. The list goes on. What was funny was that when I first started metal directing, my general manager, I went up to him and I was like, why is there no metal in this place? I mean, there's a lot of hair metal, but where's the metal? And he's like, well, it's your job to get product servicing. So you got to call up all the labels and get that going. I'm like, done. So I called all these labels. I even called, England, right? Because, Earache is there and some other labels are in Europe as well. It's funny. I told them, like, these are going to be long distance phone calls. Are you sure I can do this? They're like, don't worry. The school will pay for it. So yeah, I remember calling Earache Records. I talked to Digby Pearson, which is really kind of amazing in retrospect. But I had other people I talked to as well. I was every week I talked to Matt Jacobson over Relapse Records. He was great. He was instrumental in helping me put together my very first zine because I guess before Relapse he did a zine, and that kind of got him into doing a record label. It's pretty cool. So, and a lot of good people I was talking to in the radio industry, the music industry in general at that time, just learning a lot of cool stuff, but also being interested or introduced to a lot of really cool bands. So yeah, college radio, pretty amazing. Next is American heavy metal band Lion, formed in 1983 in Los Angeles, California. And the first question you might be asking yourself is, who the hell is Lion? Not talking about White Lion, that's an entirely different band. Lion was a band that I discovered through a movie, specifically a horror movie. Of course, some of you horror fans might already know the one I'm talking about. It is a song from Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Of course, the scene is the Crispin Glover dance scene. It is amazing in its weirdness and awkwardness and all of that. Originally, the scene was having him dance with the girl to AC/DC's Back in Black. And you can kind of make that out in sort of the original jerky movements he does in the beginning of the dance sequence. You could almost put the song to that clip. But no, I guess they couldn't get the licensing or something like that. So they had to go with Lion. And of course, Lion's album with the song Love is a Lie is on this album. This is Trouble in Angel City. I bought this album on the strength of one song I saw in one of my favorite horror movies ever. Of course, that one in particular. What can be said about Lion? They have a couple members of note. One was Doug Aldrich. Later, he went to Dio, of course. Also, Mark Edwards on drums. He was in Steeler before this. This is Ron Keel's Steeler. Before he went on to do a solo band. I know I did show Mark Edwards' solo band album. I think it was in the Book Spieler Hall, but it might have also been in another video too. I can't remember. But yeah, a couple notable people in this band. They're right there in case you're looking for them. The album is pretty decent. It's kind of a hard rock edged heavy metal record. Kind of put them on a level of like Leatherwolf. They're kind of in that realm. But Love is a Lie, great song. And it always reminds me of Friday the 13th, the final chapter. I mean, how could it not? Another band I definitely discovered through a movie, and again, a horror movie, was Fastway with their Trick or Treat soundtrack. Hard to get away from that album in 1986. I saw that movie in the theaters and really had to get that soundtrack. It was so amazing. And I don't know why I discovered Fastway so late. I mean, all these bands loved Fastway. I remember seeing pictures of Steve Harris of Iron Maiden wearing their shirts and like Circus and Hit Parader. And I'm like, why am I not looking into this band? It really took to seeing Trick or Treat to finally get me to break down and buy a Fastway album. And then I went back and bought the other albums too. But that's Fastway. Here we're talking about Lion, and I discovered them through a horror movie. Next up is British gothic metal band Paradise Lost, formed in 1988 in Halifax, England. Of course, Paradise Lost, one of the great Peaceville 3 bands that started out as Death Doom, and Paradise Lost has a bit of that in their sound too, even though they're more gothic metal now. The other two bands, of course, are Anathema and My Dying Bride on the Peaceville Records label. Classic bands. I immediately fell in love with Paradise Lost, and a lot of it came from a compilation album, which is where I first discovered them. This is Peaceville Volume 4. Amazing comp, tons of great bands that I also discovered from this very compilation album. You can take a look at the listing there. This is definitely where I first heard The Gathering, hands down. I had heard Dark Throne before. I had heard Autopsy before. Pentagram, believe it or not, I discovered through this comp with Sign of the Wolf. Great song. It's really cool to actually start it with that. It kind of makes a lot of sense given that Pentagram is kind of the progenitors of a lot of what came. But very cool. I'll just sort of open it up for you so you can see the inside as well. I love this comp. I still play this comp to this day. I mean, again, check out the bands, right? It's pretty cool. So right around the same time, I had also seen Paradise Lost in this home video. This is the Hard and Heavy series. This is the Grindcore Special Edition, which is interesting considering that Paradise Lost are not a grindcore band. And there were other bands on here that were kind of interesting. A lot of them are grindcore, but there's a lot of death metal in here too. I mean, clearly Nocturnus, Morbid Angel, Napalm Death. I mean, you can read, you have eyes. There you go. Great little comp. Paradise Lost is interviewed. There's some live clips as well. I think at least one, if not two live clips. It's hard to remember because this is on VHS and I haven't seen it in a long time. Though I'm sure it's also on YouTube if you want to watch it. Very cool. So this is right around the same time I got the comp. So probably we're talking about 1992 for me, definitely. Then I went and, of course, bought Lost Paradise. This is an OG cassette of the first album from them. But what really did it for me for Paradise Lost was their Shades of God album. I love this album. I saw the tour with Morbid Angel and Creator. Amazing songs on this one. Mortals Watch the Day opens the album. It's great. As I Died, I think they still do live. Really great stuff. So Paradise Lost, discovered them through a compilation album. A really good one that you should check out. So those were some of the ways I discovered metal bands, and not through one of their albums. Of course, there are other ways too, such as demos, interviews, word of mouth, and even from YouTubers. In fact, let me know how you discovered some of your favorite metal bands, and of course, not through one of their studio records. And if you have a YouTube channel and you want to make a thread response video to this, I would definitely be up to seeing one of those. Maybe a lot of those, that'd be pretty cool. So yeah, have some fun with this idea for sure. And if you just happen to stumble on my channel and you're wondering what else I do, my name is Matt. This is the Accusation Network, where largely I talk about metal vinyl collecting, but also classic and modern metal in general. If you like the sound of that and you have yet to subscribe to my channel, please hit that button. I would really love that. Maybe also like this video and share this, as well as my other videos out, with your friends on social media. Anyways, thank you for watching, as always, and I'll see you in the next video.